right. Welcome, everybody, to Politics After Dark. Yay! I am your host, Rachel Mills. I have three wonderful guests with me tonight who are all rock stars in their own right. I will start off and introduce Jeffrey Tucker of Liberty.me. If you are a frequent participant here at Liberty.me, you know him well. Let me mute my phone. Okay. Jeffrey, introduce yourself really quick.
Well, I'm, I guess I write a lot at Liberty.me, and well, I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Anyway, mainly I'm a friend of yours. That's my number one thing on my resume. So thank you.
And a fabulous, very natural ballroom dancer, I must say.
No, stop it. You know that's not true.
No, it's absolutely true.
Look, I like to think that you're sincere most of the time, but that comment was insincere, Rachel. I mean, look, you're very kind and very sweet, and
No. The reason that you're a fantastic ballroom dancer is because you have the carriage. You know how to stand, and you have the posture, and you're a natural.
That's a start.
That's the most dangerous kind of ballroom dancer, because if you knew a few more patterns, I mean, ooh.
We're gonna work on that. I humbly defer to you on all matters of ballroom dancing. I can tell you. I mean, truly, you're very sweet. You danced with me, and I appreciate it very, very much.
I had the best time. I recently went to Atlanta, and Jeffrey and I went ballroom dancing, and it was amazing. It was fantastic. And what are you drinking, Jeffrey?
Just a little bit of the last little bit of wine I have in the whole house right here. That's it.
The last little bit of wine in the whole house?
Yeah, it's pathetic.
That is sad. That is sad, but I have a sadder story when we get to me. Let's go to Michael Maresco. Hi, Michael. You are a grassroots rock star, and that's why I asked you on tonight. I want to talk about your perspective and where you've been. You've been on quite a long journey with the grassroots, and a little bit about you.
Well, I spent 6 years completely immersed in politics after Ron Paul announced. I found out in late 2006 he was going to. So I pretty much dropped everything and knew we could use his run to grow and raise awareness for what we're all still fighting for. And I dropped everything and spent 6 years throughout the country promoting liberty and promoting the grassroots. And then after 6 years, I realized that I was better off back in my job and promoting liberty more as grassroots.
Yeah. Well, welcome. It is great to have you. What are you drinking?
What am I drinking? I don't have anything at the moment. I'm still working, and so I will be running down to, as soon as this is done, I have to put my tie back on and go back.
So you're pretending to be a responsible citizen.
Yes, doing my best.
Well, very good. Welcome. It is great to have you. And last but not least, Tom Mullen. Fantastic author and has a fabulous perspective on the whole liberty movement as a whole. You've written some fantastic things in the Huffington Post recently that I've really enjoyed. Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm drinking Labatt Blue because I'm I'm actually now in the town where it's brewed, Buffalo, New York.
Cool.
And yeah, what you said. I like Michael. I heard about Ron Paul, but unlike Michael, I was completely ignorant that there was any politician anywhere that I would ever agree with. And sometime in the 90s, I decided I was never going to vote again. And I heard about this guy, and then I looked it up on his website to make so I could debunk him that he was supposedly libertarian and still a Republican. And then I was very pleasantly surprised to find out how wrong I was, and I got all inspired too. What they used to say, he cured my apathy. So I wrote that book and written for a lot of websites since then. And right now I do most of my stuff at Huffington Post.
Yeah, good. And what's the name of your book?
The book was A Return to Common Sense, Reawakening Liberty in the Inhabitants of America.
Yeah, very good.
And
Very
there's a
good.
new one that should be out by Thanksgiving, if I can finish it fast enough.
Oh, well, good. We'll look forward to that. So, my sad story is I am drinking club soda.
Huh.
I know, isn't that sad?
Well,
Ooh.
I mean, what, are you going through like a health thing or a detox thing, or I mean?
Yeah, it is. I'm going through a 28-day diet. It's called a fast metabolism diet, and it requires you to give up like everything good.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty much I'm kind of doing. It's very interesting, Rachel, because I'm more or less doing the same thing. I've given up everything except like cookies and
Cookies. I dream of cookies.
Big Macs. So you know,
The cookies and Big Mac's diet? That sounds awesome.
I've given up drinking entirely and limited myself only to red wine and gin. I mean,
Only those two?
yeah. So it's a struggle for me, but I feel like it's essential every once in a while, you know.
Well, I've given up for 28 days coffee, alcohol, dairy, wheat, corn, and soy.
What is left? Like broccoli?
Yeah, basically broccoli and steak. I get steak and all the vegetables I want. And
Wow.
yeah,
But actually, so I don't know.
Yeah, I've lost probably like 5 pounds in a week and a half. So there you go. It's working, and I was plateaued, and I was miserable, and anyway, that's another story.
I think it can't be bad for you. I think there's something to this. You know, in the same sense, an economy and a society needs to be disrupted with innovations and change, you know, and our lives do also. I mean, sometimes we have to force that. So we're such creatures of habit, right?
Yeah,
do the same
coffee's been difficult.
Yeah. But that kind of disruptions, it's good. I mean, your body's like wakes up and goes, okay, well, I guess I have to sort of, you know, I don't know what happens, but it's good. It's good. A change is good.
It's good. So anyway, enough about me and my sad story, which is actually a happy story because I'm feeling healthier. But the grassroots. We talked about this a little bit last week. Last week we talked quite a bit about the campaign and how it's going, and I imagine that'll be a main topic of discussion tonight. But I want to get all of your perspectives on where the energy of the grassroots is, where are we going, and does it really matter in the long run? And I think I'd like to start with Tom. In the light of that encouraging piece that you wrote in the Huffington Post. So if you could, Tom, what's the long game? Where is the energy of the grassroots right now, and does it matter long term? So what are your thoughts?
Well, if you like politicians like Ron Paul and you're a libertarian, I really think that the political process is hopeless, which is what I wrote in the not encouraging piece the week before. But, I mean, really, when you look at who votes and how many votes are cast and who consistently wins, how many people voted for the Harry Brown or Ron Paul or anybody remotely like that, the political process is kind of hopeless. The good news is almost half of everybody doesn't vote at all, and they only vote in the presidential election. And when you think about it, okay, 43% at best, or 43% doesn't vote. Sometimes it's just almost 50. And then of the people that do vote, you got to think at least a third of those people have no clue what any of the candidates stand for, what their positions are. So most of these people really don't care about politics, and I think that's a good thing. When they shove the microphone in the guy's face in the street, he says, "Who are you voting for?" and he says Hillary Clinton. They say, "Well, is that because you really like the fact that she wants to cut taxes?" And he says, "Yeah." And then everybody laughs. But I think it's just because they don't care. They make up their minds that they vote because they feel like they should or they have to or it's something to do. And I think that, unfortunately, things have to get a little bit worse around these United States before somebody feels like I better look into what these people are doing to us over there. Because right now, I mean, if you travel to other countries, the United States is still a pretty good place to be.
Mm. Tom, can I ask you something about that? You said that people just have this instinctual sort of response to who they're supporting. You know, Hillary, Bernie, whatever, Bernie Sanders, Trump, whatever. I mean, how much of this is actually, in a sense, almost a tribal identification? You know, like, I want to support the woman. I want to support the guy who wants to make America great. You know, I mean, just like
Yeah.
a radically reductionist kind of absurd level of, you know, who am I? Who is most like me? You know, attitude.
Who do I want to have a beer with?
Yeah.
Well, I think too, you have to remember, all right, so what I was talking about is the general election. Now, right now we're in the primaries, and not only are we in the primaries, but we're a long way from the primaries.
Yeah.
So they're taking these polls, and I mean, well, again, they could be hitting people who don't have any idea. But for the people who are, showing up to these Trump rallies, showing up to these Bernie Sanders rallies, they're a very small percentage of the general population.
Yeah.
And I think they really do believe in the things that they believe in, or they wouldn't bother to get all the way out there, buy the T-shirts, et cetera, et cetera. But I got to think they're one out of every 7, 8 people in this country, and everybody else is kind of living a libertarian life.
Yeah.
In that they're not looking to the government to do anything. They're getting on with their lives. They're running their businesses or doing their jobs, and they just don't feel victimized enough, I guess, by the government to really care about what it's doing at all.
Mm-hmm. So, Michael Maresco, what's your perspective? What is there missing this go round that was so igniting in 2008? You know, what's it going to take to get everybody fired up again?
I think comparing 2008 to 2016 is very difficult. The thing that fired us up was the fact that Ron Paul had no name recognition, and the media was ignoring him as they're going to ignore anybody that wants to upset the apple cart. And that's really what turned into the Ron Paul revolution, was more all that we did to bring his name out there. Whereas someone like Rand Paul doesn't have that issue. He has name recognition. Now they're still ignoring him. They're still leaving him out of polls. But we don't have that huge hurdle that we had to push in 2007.
That's true. That was the whole point of the sine wave
the banner bombs, the bike ride, the blimp, the everything was really, and the money bombs. The money bombs was more about making a statement than raising money. So
it was to force the media to talk about him.
Yeah, so it's really difficult to compare the two.
Yeah.
And talking, with Jerry's question, with Jeffrey's question about the tribalism, I think tribalism is a part of human nature that is pretty much inescapable. Now, it's much more rare in the libertarian mind thinking, but basically I find humans to be pack animals. And more or less, they don't want to all be the alpha male or the alpha female. They generally want to they would rather just live their life in peace and be left alone and have somebody else go and risk their neck fighting the big bear coming in or whatever it is. But I think tribalism is pretty much inescapable in human nature, but it's not as prevalent in the people who follow libertarians are more individualistic. They don't have so many of that tribal, that pack mentality traits that you find in the general population.
It's a beautiful thing too. I mean, I love that about libertarians more than anything else. I mean, just their capacity to sort of manipulate abstract thought and to think about the common good and the long term and all this high level thinking. It's extraordinary, and that's what we should all aspire to. And yet I myself have sort of reconciled myself to the idea that this is always going to be a minority part of the population that's capable of working through a completely systematic worldview that libertarianism represents. I mean,
Yeah,
why couldn't we? How could we expect anything more than that? I mean, ultimately, I mean, I was looking at the polls over 2008, 2012. You know, current support for Rand, and it's actually surprising. I mean, it seems like there's like a stable maybe 8% of the registered Republican vote who supports something that we would consider libertarianism. Support for liberty generally, though, is much larger. And as Tom pointed out, you know, people are living liberty every day, you know, and that's sort of the essence of their lives. Libertarianism, you know, I've kind of come to the belief that it's always going to be a rarefied and unusual sort of ideological position held by only people who, you know, are, you know, people like us, you know. I mean, that's just not the person on the street.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's kind of depressing to think that things will have to get much, much worse before more people wake up, enough people wake up in order to bring about change. But then again, I don't know if anybody here listens to the Dangerous History podcasts. Dan Carlin's podcast. There's a couple of them out there that are like really, really fascinating. And he went into the Revolutionary War and really went into depth about the populace that was supportive of the fighting before the war, and it was actually quite small. So it wasn't like some wave of people rose up like we sort of think. It was actually a much smaller percentage than you think. Yeah, Professor CJ. I think that's the one. There's Professor CJ and there's Dan Carlin. They both do very good history podcasts that are excellent. So I don't know how that translates into today, and I certainly hope, you know, nothing violent has to happen in order to improve things. I hope that change can be brought about somehow. But I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be through politics. Jeffrey's made the case that there are other ways, other avenues. I mean, how is that supposed to work? How can we bring about change in ways other than politics, Jeffrey?
Well, you know, I've speculated on this for years about how technology is going to eventually outsmart government. I mean, the thing about government is it's ultimately just brutal and stupid. You know, it always regulates the past, not the future. And it's not a very intelligent institution, whereas markets are extremely smart and crowdsourcing knowledge all the time. And entrepreneurs get wealthy by making new things, basically. And so that incentivizes a lot of people to always try something new that put around regulations. But I must tell you, Rachel, that I've been talking about this for years and abstractly, but it wasn't until this past weekend when I visited Uber headquarters in San Francisco.
Yes.
And that was an awesome experience for me because, you know, I walked into the, you know, and you have to have a special pass to get in or whatever, and I got that. And I walked in and there's like 1,000 people typing, you know, quietly on laptops, you know, and I thought, what are they doing? And in fact, what they're doing is over the course of 18 months, you know, challenged and in many cases destroyed, smashed.
Say that again?
These programmers are systematically undermining government monopolies all over the world. You know,
at Google? Evil Google?
No, at Uber. I'm speaking of.
Oh, at Uber. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh,
and Google is a different situation. Uber, it was just awesome. I mean, just these, you know, programmers basically, you know, hooking people up, you know, drivers and
fantastic,
and riders, and you know, utterly demolishing just by unleashing human energy, government, long-standing government monopolies all over the world, right? So I was in the room, I saw it happening, I thought it was awesome.
So you went to Google like last weekend, and then you just got back from Uber as well.
Yeah.
That is Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. But so, I mean, the point is that I mean, this is the peaceful revolution.
Yeah.
To see the way entrepreneurs are manipulating code and sort of allowing people to connect peer to peer to go around these institutions. And people have been agitating against these government monopolies, the transportation monopolies for half a century without any effect, right? And now suddenly, now they're falling apart. The price of New York taxi cab medallions has fallen to essentially zero from being $1 million, a year ago. So, I mean, that's devastating, and I think it represents something of a model for us, I mean, and that doesn't mean you have to become Uber in order to destroy the state. I mean, it just means you have to be clever, that's all. I mean,
smarter than the state, which is not hard.
Yeah, which is not hard, and so long as we have progress, I think that, I mean, basically, here's the thing, the state, as we know it, is an anachronism, always regulating the past. There's all these technologies that are coming online from 3D printing to cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer exchange of everything you can imagine, from tennis lessons to apartments to ride sharing, that are not well served by existing governmental structures. And I've increasingly developed the sense that basically the future won't be held back forever. I mean, I think back to the days of the collapse of the Soviet Union. I mean, Gorbachev was something of a reactionary. He was trying to hold together an old system, but everybody in Russia was ready to move forward to a new age. And eventually the center couldn't hold, and everything kind of collapsed. And sometimes I wonder if that's actually happening in a much more quiet and subtle way.
Yeah.
In this country right now. That's not politics. I mean, that's. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to put down everybody who works in politics. I think there's a lot of good people there and all the rest of it. But I just tend to think of it as a trailing indicator. Well, more than that, I'm annoyed by politics. Like, I wish we could just cancel the election. I mean, that would just be like an awesome thing. Just like. This election is not going to do anybody any good. How about let's just not have it? I mean, maybe someday we'll have another one, but just like for now, let's just like wipe it off and save a lot of money, save a lot of time, and just not have one. I don't know what maybe Obama just kind of persists in a sort of a lame duck role for another 10 years or something. I don't know how this works, but my point is that I just I can't imagine at this point that anything good's going to come out of this. And whereas it seems like on the present course, we actually seem to be making real progress in the direction we want to go. The politics at this point to me is just an annoyance. It's like a distraction. Yes, I'm interested in it, but I can't believe that any good's going to come of it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is they're going to put people in that are going to be our new overlords, and like, yeah. I don't know. I guess the whole point of voting is, to try somehow to insert what teeny tiny little microscopic voice you have to hopefully see that it's not like the worst overlord.
This is the problem. Some guy with a mandate and a vision shows up and takes power. I mean, yeah. What the hell? I mean, that's not good. We don't need that. Right.
I wonder that involving electoral politics, talking about electoral legislative politics, that there's a lot more success than we're seeing. And people tend to look at the national races and think of that as politics, and they're not looking at the down tickets, the state races, the county councils, all the way down to dog catcher. I mean, we have before Ron Paul, there was just Ron Paul in Congress. Now we have a Liberty Caucus. We've got Amash. We've got Massey. We've got Jones coming along. But that's now in state levels. Over the years, I've quietly been helping some people run, and now we have a senator in Maine who helped pass that new gun law in Maine for the concealed carry. He's just introduced a bill to make it easier for third parties to participate in debates. He's a Republican, but he just introduced a bill to make it easier for third parties to be able to run. He's making great headway. We have a guy down in Texas, a strong Tea Party kind of conservative, but he started as a Ron Paul guy, and he's now really making waves. The establishment is trying to throw up a primary against him, and the people are rallying around him. So, and by having these people in these seats, the ideas of libertarianism, the ideas that we cherish, are getting spread little by little all around. And there's more. There's a lot more people in, there's a lot of people in our local GOP committee is all Ron Paul people.
Nice.
Now we're in a very blue city, but we have all Ron Paul people running the county next door. Chairman is a Ron Paul guy. So it's a long, arduous process. I mean, it's not like, yes, okay, we do have that law in Maine that's a fruit that you can look at and say, wow, here's one of the Ron Paul guys he was an actor in New York City, and we convinced him to go up to Maine, and then he ended up running for office. Now he's a senator up there, and has really opened up freedom in Maine, and is inspiring, and is getting a lot of people on both sides of the aisle to talk more about the ideas of liberty. So this happens. Yeah, it really is. So it's important for everybody to be involved in any way they feel comfortable, whether it's doing Uber thing and being an entrepreneur and inspiring people to be independent and to create wealth. That's a great way. That's outside of politics, but politics will come in and attack Uber. So one way or another, I don't think you can escape politics. So it's important to stay involved.
Yeah, and we need politicians in there that are at least going to be more likely to get out of the way as much as possible. But I mean, that's fantastic, Michael. Really, the problem is those down ballot races are not as sexy as top of the ticket. But they really make such a big difference. Your local government really has quite a bit to do with your daily life and the competence of the government over you. And I know Jeffrey had a terrible experience a few weeks back where the local politicians or the bureaucracy made a paperwork error, and you ended up in jail, actually. Jeffrey? I think Jeffrey must be frozen.
No.
Jeffrey does look frozen.
He's frozen.
I wanted to add one thing to Jeffrey's comments,
yeah,
too, that
ahead.
might be encouraging. One word, Aerofex.
What?
Aerofex is a company that is on track to hit the market with a hovercraft, a commuter hovercraft, by 2017.
Flying cars!
Flying cars.
Finally.
And
there
who's going to build the roads for these? You're not going to need them. So it's just another example of, the market is going to be way ahead of the government on this. And I'm sure that, I don't know. I remember back in the mid-'90s when I was just first getting into the business world, and what I was hearing from our Republican Congress, remember we had Clinton was the president, was, oh my gosh, this internet market, this new economy, we have no idea how to regulate it. And I'm just all driving around thinking, yeah, I know, that's why it's working,
Yeah.
please don't try.
Yeah, stop helping, don't help.
and those kinds of innovations, like I think that, the 3D printers in its infancy, but there's going to come a time where everyone's making 3/4 of what they need in their basement, and it's not going to matter if we lose to China, with trade or whatever, There's going to be no real reason to regulate trade when most things, it's going to blow up the entire political landscape, I think, 3D printers by the time...
They're making houses with 3D printers.
Sure, yeah. And what are you going to need labor unions for? What are you going to need? Manufacturing is going to be done on an individual basis, and then I think that'll start to specialize, and you know, it's just going to be a completely different place. And yeah, and like Jeffrey said, there'll be some guy trying to pass union legislation, like he's regulating, you know, Ford Motor Company, you know, when no one's even driving on the ground anymore. So yeah, that is the government for you.
Yay. Yay for the future. There's one more issue that I really wanted to touch on. We're technically out of time, but if I can keep you a little bit past, I'd still like to ask you both, I guess Jeffrey's still frozen. Let it go, let it go. Frozen.
He got a nice handsome pose, though, that he got frozen in.
Yeah, yeah. At least he looks very contemplative. But yeah. I want to ask you about herding cats. There seems to have been, since the Ron Paul campaigns, a few efforts crop up to organize libertarians and harness the power of the grassroots, if you will. Something like Campaign for Liberty comes to mind, and just today here in North Carolina, something called Organize for Liberty launched, and it seems to be some sort of top-down mechanism to harness the power of the grassroots and make it do something. I don't know, what are your thoughts on efforts like that? Will they work? You know, is that how the grassroots operates? Who wants to go first?
Well, I think Michael will say something more encouraging, so let me go first.
Go first, Michael.
Plus, he knows what he's talking about when you talk about this kind of thing, but I don't. But I will say this. I have looked at some numbers, and there's really just, I don't think anybody could do it any better than the Ron Paul campaign in 2012. 2008 wasn't run quite as well, I don't think. 2012, I don't think he could have been any better. I don't think the organization could have been any better. I actually covered the RNC, and he had 11 states, and he didn't win the popular vote in any of them. I mean, not even close did he win the popular vote, and he still had managed to organize enough to get 11 states where he had the most delegates. So I don't think it can be done better than that, and that's 2 million votes, and there's just not enough, in my opinion, in this political landscape to have an effect. I mean, I think you could get back to that point again, and you're going to find out, okay, now there's 2.1 million votes. Where do we go from here? If things get worse, if it's relatively worse here than in a lot of other countries because we're going in one direction, they're going in the other, then maybe more people might get on board. But that's my take. So I'm hoping Michael will say something more optimistic.
Well, with any organization that you start out, a lot of it's just hit and miss and just making the effort. Sometimes you start one organization and it morphs into something else, and the person who started it lost interest, but somebody else has picked it up and actually makes something better of it. Sometimes they die away, but the effort of making the effort is where those chances come from. So you sent the link of the place in North Carolina, the organization that's starting up right there. I have every hope for them, and as you know, people making those efforts. Without people making those efforts, there's not much hope for more people to learn about and want to get included in and become involved. So you know, it's yes, it is herding cats, and it's a tough thing to do, but there's reward also. There's a lot of reward for it when things, even if things don't go that well, there's reward that comes down later on if you've kept your head up and kept ethical. There's reward. There's hidden rewards that sometimes don't show up for years. So, but you know, it's just keeping optimistic and keeping faith and keeping pedaling. You just keep pedaling, and eventually you reach your goal.
Says the Ron Paul writer. Very good. Very good. And Jeffrey, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, I'm back. You know, this is a lesson. No central points of failure allowed. I have a backup internet connection. One collapsed, and so I was able to renew a second one. So sorry,
wow.
I missed that bit there. So.
Did you catch the question? The question was about organizing libertarians and herding cats, and this
Yeah.
is your chance to talk about Liberty.me.
Yeah, right. Of course, I mean, Liberty.me is radically disorganized, and probably so. I really wanted a site that nobody controlled. Actually, that was sort of the goal. I got tired of my editorial role. I'd made too many mistakes as an editor in the past, being the gatekeeper and excluding ideas that turned out to be brilliant, just because I didn't understand them at the time. I mean, this is the problem with editors. The publication's only as smart as its editor, and I became frustrated with that because I had missed a number of very important trends. And so I really wanted a kind of a crowdsourced website that the people themselves could control. I mean, that was the whole goal, that we could reach a large public and everybody could post. And I wanted to give as prominent a role for new voices, without my intervention as possible, just so I could see what would happen. And I've just been blown away about what I learn every single day on Liberty.me, from our writers and from the forums, and it's just an enormously successful thing. I mean, I imagined this. I thought that creating a kind of environment that permitted chaos would actually emerge in a sort of order, and my theory, was right.
Very
so I'm
good, very true.
very pleased by that. In terms of political organizing, I think you were talking about this organization that you had sent out, a very flashy website, a kind of a quasi Tea Party. Is that what you were talking about? Sort of Tea Party libertarianish organization? And
Yeah.
yeah. So it all looks good on the face of it, just like everything else does, like Heritage Foundation, whatever. But I'm very concerned these days, more and more so, about how do I put this? The possibility that really good intentions get channeled into dark ways towards authoritarian sort of causes. And the reason I raise this is because of the implausible success of Donald Trump, and yeah, I mean, intellectuals just laugh at it, but I think that I'd be curious about this. There were some polls of Trump supporters, or rather, self-identified libertarians within the Republican Party who turn out to be big Trump supporters, and it concerns me because sometimes you can kind of get an unfocused ideological anti-establishmentarianism, I guess you could say, that is just against the status quo. Like, anybody who threatens the status quo has got to be a friend of mine, which turns out not always to be true.
Yeah.
I'm very worried about. I find myself sort of concerned that a lot of the that sort of anti-government ideology that Ron Paul tapped into could find itself diverted into causes that are really antithetical to our ideals. I mean, I'm saying this because during the last debate, I was sitting. I go to this public space to watch these debates because I'm hoping that some random people will show up and give me some fodder, right? So, and sure enough, there's a lady sitting next to me, and she was one of the stupidest people I've ever known in my life, but she was amazing. She hated the media. She hated the media. Right? Not a bad impulse. She hated the politicians. She hated the bureaucrats. She hated everything. She hated everything. And she was railing all night long during the debates. Oh, you stupid, media bitch. Stop asking such persistent questions. And then somebody would answer, and she'd go, oh, shut up, you idiot politician. We're sick of your types. And I thought, well, I sort of feel like I should be, agreeing with this person. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you know the punchline here. It turns out she's a fanatical supporter of Trump, right?
Wow.
The most authoritarian, most centralist, most aggressive, warlike, would-be, brown shirt, dictator type. You can imagine. So in the name of opposing government and opposing the establishment, she finds herself supporting the wealthiest, most anti-libertarian in a way candidate there is. I mean, it's this kind of full vision of let's make America great again by getting rid of everybody else and putting me as the El Duce. So,
yeah,
if I could add something to that, Rachel, my perspective is different, which is, and this is how you and I got to talking about doing this show. The Republican base, in my opinion, is not upset at the establishment because it hasn't shrunk the government, cut taxes, et cetera, et cetera. The Republican base is upset that the government isn't bigger in ways that they want it to be bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And
in the social ways.
And I would say that I'm kind of giving away this book that I'm dying to finish.
Like on military? I mean, yeah, I want to know why. I mean, like in Rachel's social sense, I agree, but I mean, this is intriguing to me.
Well, let me say this, and you can agree with this or not, but if you look through history, I'm not just talking the Republican Party, the conservative philosophy that underlies it. They always say, well, he's not a real conservative. Yes, he is. If you start from Thomas Hobbes and go to Edmund Burke to Alexander Hamilton to Henry Clay to Abraham Lincoln and all the way through conservative history in England and America, it's always been about an all-powerful government that regulates everything, that it's always been protectionist. The Republican Party was born to institute protectionism when we had free trade. I mean, that was their platform, other than anti-slavery, which they should get credit for. But, in getting rid of slavery, we got in government roads. All the roads used to be not only built but financed privately before the Civil War. That's something that people just forgot about, But what did we get with the Republicans and their dominance for the second half of that decade was protectionism, higher tariffs, more corporate subsidies, subsidizing railroads, and they never really changed. They just didn't look as big government when people like Wilson and FDR came in. But, as late as George Bush, they're still putting the steel tariff. I mean, they're still doing the same things they were doing, back when Alexander Hamilton was writing his boring papers.
Corporate bailouts, anti-competitive cartelizations of industry. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that we're sitting here going, well, why don't they like Rand Paul? Well, because he's not a real Republican, Neither was Ron. Ron is the biggest rhino in the world because Ron's
he's not a Democrat. I mean,
no, he's not a Democrat now, but he's a classical liberal or a libertarian. I mean, that's a new word. And he would have been on Jefferson's side back in the old days. That the Republican Party today is on Hamilton's side. So.
Well, this is actually a really interesting. Your argument, your points are just really intriguing to me. I mean, Rand Paul, when he started running, started picking these issues that Republicans have not talked about, like the surveillance state. The rise of big government in the name of protecting your security, the problem of aggressive foreign wars and their blowbacks, and actually, I mean, in my lifetime, apart from Jack Kemp, Rand Paul's the first Republican for running for the office of the presidency who's talked about the effects of the brutal effects of state policies and how they disproportionately affect Black Americans. In particular, he was really been very good on prison reform and the drug war. And I remember when he started talking about this, I thought, well, this is pretty interesting. I mean, we're going to see a test. Do Republican voters actually care about these extremely important issues? And I think the answer was no. I mean, there was I think it was an article in Washington Post by sort of a neoconservative or something that said, hey, Rand Paul needs to shut up about all this nonsense about the Black people and everything. I mean, like, the prisons, I mean, that's fine if he's challenging Hillary Clinton for the nomination. You can't be talking about this shit in front of Republican audiences. They don't care about that. Right?
Wow. Now I'm depressed.
No, I mean, it's really. So, in other words, I mean, like, you talk to libertarians, they all tell you that, well, Rand Paul's not doing badly because he's doing badly because he's not been anarchist enough or whatever kind of nonsense they say. Actually, I think Rand Paul is not doing well for precisely his virtues. Actually, that's what I would say. That he's talking about like a general form of human liberty, and about issues that So I'm extremely intrigued, Tom, by your comment that actually the Republicans are looking for a specific kind of big government advocate, and Rand cannot be that.
Right. No.
Yeah.
I
So
think,
he's.
I think Republicans always have, and that's look at who they've elected. Yeah.
That's extremely interesting to me. Yeah.
Well, we are well past time, so we better leave it there. But
We're
before,
done? That's the end of the show?
Yeah, we're done. It's technically supposed to be 30 minutes, and we've already gone, over 45. So,
I was starting to. I feel like I was just really like enjoying our two guests.
I know. It's like we were just getting started.
Thank you both. Very, very much.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining Politics After Dark. Before we go, I have to plug 2 shows that are coming up on this same platform. Bitcoin Brothers with Bob Murphy is coming up tomorrow at the same time. Tomorrow, October 9th, 9:30. And also we've got, let's see, the Naomi Brockwell Ignited show, Liberty Spaces. That's coming up on Tuesday, October 13th. Almost every night of the week there is an interesting show here on Liberty Live, Liberty.me Live. So if you're new here, if this is your first show, check out some more. And
Rachel, can you put us together again? Because Tom and Michael, I want to know more about their views on a lot of subjects.
I'd love to.
So, I mean, I would like to cover a lot of issues like immigration, the sociology, politics, and economics of that subject. And,
yeah, so, that would be great. Are you down, Tom? Are you down, Michael?
Sure.
I would like to hear like a lot more about all these topics you guys were talking about. So I'd love to do this again.
Yeah, okay. Likewise.
Great. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us. This was Politics After Dark.
Thanks.